the latest news from across non-league football. Online at backofthenetsouth.co.uk and broadcasting live on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. This is Back of the Net News.
Here's the top news stories at 7 p.m. The EBAC Northern League has responded to the league's committee's decision to turn down their proposal for a new regional Step 4 league by announcing that they've lodged an appeal. The league was intended to help facilitate an ascent into the third tier of non-league for Northern League clubs. The changes continue for crisis-hit Chester FC as 4 new directors have been co-opted onto the club's board. The club desperately need to raise £50,000 if they're to avoid going out of business within months. Long-standing Bedford Town chairman David Howell has sold the EvoStick South East club to a local consortium. Howell has confirmed that the Eagles are now under new ownership, with first-team manager John Taylor part of the group, which now controls the club. EvoStick Northern Premier League side Marine have announced plans to delay the intended stadium upgrade until the summer of 2019. This will coincide with the Mariners' 125th anniversary. The club took the decision following a review of the requirements and time it would take to apply for grant funding. And finally, Nick Davis has resigned as manager of Bostik League South club Sittingbourne following their 3-1 defeat against Horsham on Saturday. The side have lost 9 in their last 11 and as a direct result has slipped down to 14th in the Bostik South table. That's the latest news. I'm James Cummins.
It's 7 p.m. on Wednesday evening. It's time for the biggest non-league football debate in the country. Search official BOTN and get involved with tonight's show.
So very good evening and welcome to tonight's show. Back on a Wednesday night, plenty for you to get your teeth into this evening between now and 9 o'clock. James, Dom and Anthony join me to look across non-league football and focus, of course, on the Bostik Leagues for the next 2 hours. So much to talk about. We're going to get our teeth into the finances across the non-league game, and we're also going to talk all about transfer deadline day. I know there's not a window particularly in non-league football, but there's still plenty of transfers happening in and around non-league. And does the prices at the top of the game, do they have an effect on the prices that are now being seen in the non-league game? We've got a non-league football quiz and Super Tub as well. You can get involved on social media. Official BOTN this evening.
Have your say. Get in touch on social media. Just search official BOTN.
So very good evening. Welcome to the show. Welcome Anthony, Dom and James tonight. Nice to have you with us for 2 hours this evening. We're going to start by talking about Cyril Regis and paying our respects. And Anthony, you were there at the funeral yesterday, and such a great figure in the game. So much has been talked about what he did for the game, but he also had an effect at non-league level as well.
I think he had an effect at every single level. I think it was Andy Cole that said yesterday he was the reason why he played football. And being in the room before the actual memorial service and again afterwards, the amount of people that spoke about the influence that he had on them, and I'm going to speak for myself and my best mate Sil, who's lying in the hospital at the moment. Those were the icons that we looked up to. It started with Clyde Best at West Ham, and then when Cyril went from non-league and got signed at West Brom in 1975-76 season, and he started playing in 77. What happened was it was almost amazing, because we didn't really see black players on TV playing football, and to see that, but then to see that the way people spoke about him while he was playing, and then the influence that Brendan Batson and Laurie Cunningham, because Laurie Cunningham was always full of skill and trickery, but Cyril had a calmness and a demeanour that just went about his business in such a professional manner that's what gave him the respect, or gave everybody the respect for him. So being there yesterday was not just a privilege and an honour, to be surrounded by so many football people, but the power of the service, and not just talking about football, but just talking about people and how people are influenced in the game, not just on the pitch, but also off the pitch as well. It was so powerful and unbelievable.
And of course for us, that we mentioned at the start, the tie with non-league, so important that somebody could not only have the goals that we've seen plenty of over the last couple of weeks at the top level, but also have that effect all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, to think that he was playing grassroots football. Boreham Wood tried to sign him, and he actually refused to sign for Boreham Wood at the time, and then went to Hayes. And as everybody then knows, he played for Moseley and he scored 25 goals before Mr. Allen, I call him Mr. Allen at West Brom, who fell in love with him. And it wasn't just I like this player, because he faced a lot of abuse. Why are we going to pay that kind of money for a non-league player to come to West Brom, who were one of the biggest clubs in the country at the time, still are. And he dug his heels in. And I've got to give respect to somebody like that who's prepared to dig their heels in and recognise a player who's playing non-league, who can make it in the game. And, we talk about Ian Wright, who did the same, and lots of other players who did the same. But that was the catalyst. Yeah. And for me, I think that just says a lot about individuals who, Big Ron Atkinson was there yesterday. I had a good chat with him. Obviously people have talked about what's happened to him in the game, but he was happy to play Cyril. And he, when he put Brendan and Laurie together, as far as he was concerned, he was proud of those players. And yesterday, he was very, very proud. And I'm proud to be able to say that yesterday.
Yeah, and everybody talks about the Jamie Vardy effect, going from non-league to the top level, but not to be forgotten that Cyril Regis did the same as well. And, of course, never forgotten now, Cyril Regis. James, so much more to talk about on the show tonight. We're going to start with the non-league action from last night. Plenty of games and some big ones as well.
Oh, there's so much to talk about. The main talking point from the Premier League in the Bostik League is that Billericay are now top of the league. An emphatic 4-0 win against Worthing. Adam Cunnington has been deadly so far this season. He scored twice. Sam Deering as well also got a brace too. A big result last night. And of course, Dulwich are going to be looking at that and thinking, is that going to be a pivotal result for them so far as the season's got left to go? Also, a big one last night as well at Westumble, only down the road. And Mark White's not going to be too happy about the result from yesterday. It's 2-2 against Tooting and Mitcham, and Frank Wilson will probably be the happier of the two managers, considering they scored in the 90th minute through Ollie Bennett to make it 2-2. Exciting game. You were there yesterday. James Batchelor was there yesterday, although he's not here today. Hopefully he gets better and well soon. Merstham, they're in good form at the moment. 2-1 winners, another 90th minute winner. Charlie Penny on the score sheet scoring the winner. That's his 4th goal in 3 games, and that's good to see the ex-Dulwich and Woking man coming back to form, especially after the injury he had last season and his recovery from that, of course. Leatherhead playing well too. 4-1 winners away from home against Hendon, which is out of character for Hendon so far this season. They've been playing well. Nico Muir, has his head been turned after his trial at QPR? Yet to see that, to be fair. How much of an effect will that have on Hendon as they go into the latter part of the season? And in the last game in the Premier League yesterday, an absolute humdinger at Wingate and Finchley. 4-3 against Lowestoft Town. An ex-Woking loanee and QPR player, Ben Patty, scoring another 90th minute winner. So 3 games yesterday in the Premier League had 90th minute winners, but a good win for Wingate and Finchley last night.
Yeah, some really big games, Dom, yesterday across the Bostik Premier League, and Wingate and Finchley doing, really well to win that game. Tight game it was. If we go back to Merstham, let's start with them first of all. We mentioned before the show Charlie Penny's come back in, scoring a lot of goals. He actually got injured in the game before Oxford in the FA Cup, the final qualifying round. They've been without him for such a long time, and I know at the club that they feel that if he'd have been fit all season, it might have been slightly different for them this year.
Yeah, it's amazing if you've got a top draw striker in any team, it transforms a team, I think, and he is pretty decent for that league. I think I was at the game where he got injured, to be honest, but yeah, he's been out a hell of a long time and probably loving playing at the moment. So yeah. It's good.
And Anthony, James mentioned Nico Muir there, another striker that's been doing brilliantly this season that Hendon have got and they have had all year, and is one of the reasons I'm sure that they're up where they are. Could his head have been turned by a possible trial for QPR? Do players need extra management perhaps when that happens?
I think the opportunity to go to QPR, I think it was a week he was on trial for, is just a fantastic experience. And knowing Chris Ramsey and people like that, like I do, I think he will have got great support and most probably some bits of information that he might not normally get when he's training and playing. So I think the experience for him will have been a fantastic one. It might be hard to then just go back to Hendon and, you know, think about what could possibly be in the future. And head turned, I think he's quite a stable personality, and it sounds like he's a down-to-earth lad. So I'm hoping that he's taken the opportunity as a learning experience. And, you know, obviously he's on the radar of all those professional clubs at the moment, and I'm hoping that he does very well.
A few games in the Bostik South last night as well, James.
Yep, a couple in the Bostik South. Chipstead 1, Guernsey 0 in the Glamour Tide there. Guernsey have had an awful run since they lost Ross Allen as he went to New Zealand. That is a massive loss for that team. Again, one of those kind of examples that you have that they form the team around one particular player. They've not coped very well since their talismanic striker has gone to the Southern Hemisphere. A game at which our man attended last night, Molesley versus Whiteleaf. 0-0 draw there. That's all we need to say about that. And a decent result yesterday for Malcolm Porter against a very well fancied Hastings United side, South Park, with a 1-0 win for them. So a good result yesterday for Malcolm Porter's side.
A couple of games in the Bostik North as well.
Yep, 2 results there. Potters Bar Town, I can't even speak. Potters Bar Town got there in the end. 3-0 win against Malden and Tiptree. That's a good result for them, really, considering how Malden and Tiptree have been so far this season. And Jodie's side, Haybridge Swiss, they drew 0-0 against Ware.
We mentioned Haybridge a couple of weeks ago. Jodie was meant to be here tonight. He can't be. We mentioned the fixtures, Anthony, that they have had. A 0-0 draw yesterday. They were much fancied to get promotion with all the games in hand, and we did say that the fixtures perhaps would come to catch them up. It seems as though it is having that effect now. I
think what we say, we prefer the points in the bag rather than games in hand. It's one of those situations where there's going to be a serious build-up of games, which means the players have got to recover very, very quickly. Given that a lot of the guys work during the day and have to travel and stuff like that, I'm not sure that a lot of them can recover as well as they might do if they were in an environment where they've got time to rest. And I think that's going to play a really, really big part in what we call the business end of the season.
Let's move on and talk about the financial struggles across non-league. This is a really interesting topic, and we're going to look at a few Bostik teams. But first of all, let's talk about the likes of Hartlepool and Chester, who are struggling right now to keep themselves alive. Dom, in your experience as a manager, how much involvement do managers have, and how much involvement would the likes of the Hartlepool or Chester manager have in the finances, and how much worry would they perhaps have?
I don't think you get too involved in it, really. You're given a budget. If you're diligent, you try and stick to that budget, and that's set by the powers that be, at the club. So you don't get too involved with the general running of a club. I know there's some managers that are slightly different, and some managers are more entwined behind the scenes. But in general, I think you're just left to manage the playing side of things, and you kind of hope that behind the scenes they're doing a decent job, and they're preparing the budget in the right way, that they're not going to then come unstuck, which is clearly what's happening at a lot of these clubs. There's nothing worse as a manager if you have your budget pulled or reduced and you've committed to players, because at the end of the day it's your reputation that's affected. And I think that happens a hell of a lot in non-league, where you promise someone something and it gets pulled at certain stages. And for me, it's just not right. It can have a massive effect on players if they're reliant on that sort of, on their money. And you see it all the time. I think Greenwich, there was one recently down there where I think they wanted to get a couple of people off the payroll, and I think the manager quit on the basis that it's not right. So yeah, it's from my point of view, I don't get involved in any way, really. I'm given a budget. It's not flexible in any way, and we take the view at the start of the season. And especially at Horsham, they're very good with things like that. They set a budget that they know they can afford, so that there's never a situation where they have to pull the plug at any stage.
And just give you an example of the extremities in those two clubs. Chester are in need of £50,000 in the short term in order to stay in business, and the fans have raised over 17,000 since their online campaign began. Hartlepool United are really looming in administration for them. They're surviving off crowdfunding right now. They have raised £83,500, which just shows you what an effort that they've done. But they need to reach £200,000. They're relegated from the Football League for the first time last year, losing around £130,000 a month. And we'll come on to that in a minute, the effects of relegation perhaps across non-league. But Anthony, how much effect does it have on the players? And Dom said, look, it doesn't affect the manager. We get on with the coaching side of it. How much effect will it have on the players knowing that a club like Hartlepool and Chester are in that situation when you go out on a Saturday afternoon?
I think it's going to play a part because you go to the club and you're promised, certain finances or certain deals, and it's like anything, isn't it? It feels as though the players possibly are being betrayed if the club aren't 100% open and honest. And I think if you are honest with the players, they tend to view you differently, and especially if the manager has a good relationship with the players, because I think what happens is the manager will work with the players and they'll play based on whatever wages they're on, okay, and then the chairman or the board says, well, we've lost some money and therefore we've now got to release X amount of players, or we've got to lose X amount of players from the particular situation. Now, if the manager's astute enough and the players love him, he'll be able to hold on to them for a period of time. But if they're that good, there's chances are there's going to be another club who can come in and say, look, we can pay you X amount more. And potentially the players have a lifespan with which they can play, and they're looking to earn as much as they can within that time.
With the money that's in the Premier League, I'll open this out to everyone, the money that's in the Premier League, it's the richest league in the world, and you see teams tumbling down like Hartlepool now in non-league, and they've come out of the Football League really struggling. It's a dire situation for them. Like there are other examples of non-league clubs as well. Could more be done, James?
I think it should be. I think with so many people now going away from the higher leagues and actually taking a more of a vested interest into non-league because they feel it's more true to the real principles of football, I think there should be more done, because then again, non-league and the way that non-league is set up with the teams that are there is just a part of fabric of the modern day football game as the Premier League. And to lose clubs in such a way without the support of other teams that are more financially viable is a crime. It's an absolute crime, and there should be more of an emphasis on different clubs who are higher up to support these teams. That should be a given.
But I just completely disagree. In my opinion, why should B&Q look after a little shop on the high street? Why should Man United or Liverpool, who have got their own marketing, they've got massive amounts of revenue coming in, why should they have to prop up clubs that can't fund themselves and look after their own business? If you take Chester for example, how many times now have they been in dire straits? It's got to be 3 or 4 times. They dropped down the leagues, they've climbed back up. Whoever's behind the scenes at that club is neglecting the club. They've got a duty of care to a football club, and they're not dealing with it in the right way. If their budget's been set and they can't survive on that budget, why are they having that budget? Why are they in that league? They could drop down a couple of leagues and be comfortable and not spend as much. I just think too often it's people behind the scenes that mess up businesses, and football clubs are businesses at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Looking at a couple of examples in the Bostik leagues, Dulwich Hamlet obviously facing all sorts of evictions and financial difficulties, and they're in a big legal dispute at the moment with the council regards to their licensing. They need to come up with £150,000 shortfall, so it's affecting the leagues that we're looking at. A situation like that, perhaps different views here, but Dom, what you're saying is that is solely on Dulwich Hamlet.
I think with Dulwich is a different one, because my understanding is, not got the inside track on it, but I do think the it's been moved slightly with the setup behind the scenes there, so I think that's affected them. I think it's the company that own Is it they own the ground, or they own the club?
It's the ground which they're on,
Yeah.
because I think they have a joint ownership or an agreement with the Sainsbury's as well, and
Right.
that's come into it, and it's been involved with, I can't remember who the actual firm are, but it's entwined with Southwark Council.
So I mean, that's a slightly different one, because obviously as a football club, you know, if someone pulls the carpet out from under you, you're in a tricky situation. But it's the ones that just overspend, and they go up the leagues and they overspend, and it's an ego trip for the committees and the directors in the boardroom. And I think that's unfair on the supporters of football clubs. So I feel for the supporters, but I've got no sympathy for the clubs themselves, because these people are just not running a club commercially.
It is the argument, Anthony, which is a little bit in between James and Dom, the fact that at the top level we're so rich in the Premier League, we're spending so much money, it is ridiculous. That trickles down to the Championship, to League One, League Two. So when these clubs go up, and we talk about overspending, if you're a club that's in the Bostik Premier Division now and you go up to the National League in a couple of years' time, you have to spend to stay in. You have to raise your budgets. The cost of running that football club is astronomical, and it's trickling down the leagues. So therefore, does the Premier League not have a responsibility to be setting the bar so high financially to the clubs that are lower down, because it is effectively why they're struggling?
Well, I think at the moment, when we talk about the Premier League, it is a league on its own, and the players that play in that category of football are getting paid vast amounts of money, and therefore the income has to meet that. Now, you've got clubs who can meet it because they've either got merchandising or investments from wealthy owners, etc. But there's other clubs in the same league who can't actually compete with them. So when I look at the amount of salaries that some of the managers are on in the Premier League, and the players' wages, and then you compare that to certain clubs like Brighton, for example, and you know, where the manager's on a lot less, and the players are on a lot less, the budget's a lot less, but they're managing within their means, and therefore I think there's some responsibility. I think Dom's right that they are a business. I think James is right, is that there's some form of responsibility to sort of keep the game flowing. And I think if it's how they keep the game flowing, how do they keep investing in other clubs, and that might be, you know, players coming out of the game and giving something back to lower league clubs, especially long league clubs, and allowing them the opportunity to grow. But I think what Dom said, then when you give the money, it has to be used and invested wisely, as opposed to just, you know, paying players at that level ridiculous amounts in wages, and almost, you know, meeting league wages, which then causes them a problem in the long term, especially if they're on contract. When
we talk about responsibility, Lewis are an example. In 2010, a group of fans came together. They rescued the club from extinction, basically, with an unpaid tax bill, and they then got together and opened the membership to the wider community scheme. Club has now over 800 owners. They had various issues to overcome, and what they did was they had to drop down a couple of leagues to then get it right. They've now got different facilities, they've had various grants, but they've made up around £200,000, which has been achieved via the community shares scheme. That is an example, perhaps, of what you were saying, Dom, about taking responsibility, to having had to drop down 2 leagues, and now on the cusp, once they've rebuilt their club 8 years later, of going in to the Bostik Premier Division.
Yeah, it's a perfect example. I mean, they're fantastically run now. They're innovative in what they do. They're a bit quirky, I suppose, but you know, where they are in the world, you can get away with that a little bit. But I think, you know, that's kind of what you want. I think it's the proof is the fact that it's supporter run, or, you know, kind of supporter run. They've got the club's best interests at heart. So the guy who was in there before, who was throwing a lot of money and got them up into the conference, but, you know, was that just an ego trip for him? Because he certainly didn't leave any infrastructure in place. And you go down there now and you look at the pitch, is so much better. Facilities are so much better. They've got the 3G training. They've got all the youth teams running through it. Ladies football. That's how you want to run a football club, in my opinion.
Yeah, really good example, James, of what they've done. Is that realistic, though, that every club could do something similar? Or is it just the area, perhaps, that they're in?
I don't think it is. I think it's realistic if you've got somebody in who's willing to run a club properly. And there's been so many different examples throughout the non-league pyramid where people have come in, not irrespective of the area or not, and suffered fatally as a result. You need to look at the likes of Rushton and Diamonds, Kettering, for example, Farsley Celtic, even Aldershot, for example. I think the key thing with keeping clubs afloat and making sure that they are well run is making sure that you have somebody who does come in with a realistic end goal and a plan. Not just a plan to say, right, we're going to get the team into the Football League within 5 years. You have to say, we want to run it financially sound, make sure that we run it within our financial means and have a realistic plan. So say you've got a structure in place, like what Dom just said. You make sure that you have somebody who's in there to realistically run the club with a setup as it should be, rather than just pumping money into something. And when it goes wrong, like, for example, Newport County, the money runs out and they run off. And there's been too many cases of that in the past.
When we look at the Bostik Premier Division and we look at Billericay, and a lot of people say fantastic job that Glenn Tamplin's done to come in and around Billericay and Essex build this football club and put his own money in, and fair play to him. The knock-on effect that then has for clubs in this league this year trying to compete, are they then putting themselves in financial jeopardy? And would we be looking at something like a wage cap in the Bostik Premier Division, in the National South, the National League? Would that help the situation?
I think a wage cap in each league structure would help. I think what James has just said, it has to be sustainable. And when you start looking at investment into one club with particular players who have been brought down from leagues above to win you the league this year, the question is, how are you going to keep and motivate them next year? Now, the only way to do that is either to bring in a coach who can really sort of say, I'm going to improve you so that clubs higher up are looking at you again, or pay them more money, which then means you're going down the same road again. So I think it becomes a vicious cycle. I think what you want is people who want to play for your club, especially at non-league level, which is about grassroots, local players playing for local clubs and then finding their way up the leagues. But if you're just investing in players to come from all over the country to play for your club, that to me sounds like a short-term strategy.
When we look at this as well, last week we talked about the youth development and youth players coming through. If we had a wage cap, Dom, would it mean that if there was a wage cap for the Bostik South, the Bostik North, and a different wage cap for the Bostik Premier Division, would it mean that youth players perhaps get more game time? Would it be a much more even playing field and be more down to the coaching?
Yeah, I think both. I think you'd if you were on a bit more of a level playing field, you'd find out who were the decent managers, the decent coaches out there. It is a hell of a lot easier if you can go out and spend £300-400 on a striker. So yeah, I mean, it would put a bit more of the skill into it. But I mean, realistically, can it? I'm not sure we'd ever see it happen, because there's so many ways of getting round. I mean, you go back to the amateur game historically in this country, and people were paying backhanders out of people's pockets. Man City have got round financial fair play, haven't they, with that big sponsorship deal, which is basically the owners sponsoring their own club. There's always going to be a way around it, so it's a tricky one. It's never a level playing field, football, is it really?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you asked the question about numbers of an academy players. With so many long league teams having their own academies now, I'm going to ask a rhetorical question, which is, what's the pathway for those players? Because ultimately, if you've got clubs who are paying quite a lot of money, that means generally you're looking for some relative success, and that success looks quite instant. To me, if it's a long-term plan where you bring players through, like the likes of Dulwich Hamlet and stuff like that, where you can then promote the players, you can mix them with the more experienced players, they then get better, which means then you build what I would classify as a more sustainable model. And therefore, you then look at your homegrown local players representing your team, which hopefully is going to bring your local support as well.
And I'm right in saying that across all of the leagues, whatever level you play at, you have to report financially to the league that you're in about your incomings and outgoings as a club. Is there more responsibility, perhaps either the FA or on the leagues, to not only govern the finances when we talk about wage caps, but perhaps provide business support and business workshops to those running the clubs?
Yeah, I think it could all help, couldn't it? I mean, you just see it so often with people that go into football clubs. Maybe it's the same in all industries, but football just seems to attract people that don't seem to think of the bigger picture ever. It's just such a common thing amongst so many football clubs. But also at the same time, when you're in there at the time, ask Lewis whether that period where they were winning things and going up through the leagues, would they swap that for 10 years of mediocrity, or would they like the boom bust? Same with Portsmouth. Would those supporters have taken that FA Cup and that time when they had a proper side down there? Would they take that for the next 10 years playing in League One and League Two? It's a strange one, isn't it? As a supporter, you get along, you go along with the ride, don't you? So.
Yeah.
I think Lincoln City are a good example, and the reason I'm using that is more because of the Cowley brothers and what they've done. But they've taken the mentality from Concord, Rangers and clubs like that up to Lincoln, and they're still looking at working with the players in the same way they worked before. I don't think they break the budget in terms, but they're also just looking at a sustainable model. And what they've been really keen to do is to bring the whole town of Lincoln together, but also using young players as well as more experienced players, so long as they can sort of get some sustainability in the league. And I think that approach should be commended. When we look at that, I think the question that should be asked is, how can we support these clubs, like you said, Ben, to build a model, whether it be from the FA or independent organisations, maybe consultants who can actually start to help them look at their finances. And also, how do we run this as a business which will last a long time?
Interesting point that you brought up there, Anthony and Dom, which is about the clubs that enjoy the ride and the fans and the supporters. So the supporters of Billericay Town at the moment will be loving the fact that they're going to perhaps win the league this season and have a great chance next year when they go up to the National South. What happens to them in a few years' time if Glenn Tamplin decides that he doesn't want to run it anymore, and then they struggle to pay their bills and struggle to pay their players' wages, and then they go on that decline again? Do the supporters take that? And is that more pressure then on all football clubs? So if you've got the likes of Billericay in the Bostik leagues, you've got Manchester City and teams that we know of that have got this money, does that then put more pressure on every team? Because the fans of different teams, the likes of Stainstown and the likes of Needham Markets, they're then saying, well, why are my team not winning why are we not doing that? So then the owners and the board have to try and find the money to bring players in, perhaps putting themselves at risk, because everyone's looking at the teams that can do it and say, I want my team to do that.
If I was a Bostik Prem club this season, I would have probably paid as little as possible, because you're not going to win that league. Billericay had it wrapped up from day one, and if hopefully you're not going to go down with just the one down. I don't think I think you've got to be mental to try and go toe to toe with someone who's spending that sort of money. I mean, it seems like madness to me. I would just accept the fact that this year they're going to run away with the league and build for maybe the following season. Or
do you think, I'm going a bit off topic here, but do you think Dulwich Hamlet, Hendon, the likes of Folkestone and the rest of the teams up there, do you really think in the dressing room they know that they think Billericay has won it?
Well, yeah, I would probably say so. Yeah, I mean, I feel for Dulwich this year, because the last couple of years they've been in the playoffs, they've run superbly, they play lovely football, and they've come up against a juggernaut this year that they're just it's a very tricky situation. But it doesn't mean you give up. It doesn't mean because football does have a habit. The underdog can win, but I think with the Billericay team this year in that league, that's just a freak one. You look at the players they've got. It's a good Conference South side, and the jump between the two leagues is massive, and so maybe you do have to just accept you're not going to win it. There's still the playoffs. There's still a chance to do things, but yeah. I mean,
let us know what you think if you're a Dulwich Hamlet fan, a Hendon fan, anybody that's up in amongst the playoffs at the moment. Have you really thrown in the towel as a supporter? Do you think that Billericay have just won this league easily? If you're a player or a coach, get in touch with us, one of those teams, and let us know maybe what your dressing room, your team talks are like. If you want to get involved tonight, official BOTN, we're going to come back to the topic of finances across non-league, especially in the Bostik leagues. But right now, we are going to turn our attention to the non-league football quiz.
This is the non-league football quiz.
Right, last week we had a few complaints from Peter Augustine about some of the questions. No such complaints, I'm sure, tonight from our pundits here, who will all be fighting it out to be the best non-league brain in the studio. James won it last week, so he's got another opportunity to defend his crown. We're going to kick off with our first question this evening. Play along, official BOTN across social media. Let us know your answers and how you get on.
Question 1.
There are only 2 Bostik teams who are undefeated in their last 10. Can you name them? Only 2 Bostik teams who are undefeated in their last 10 games. Can you name them? A wry smile from Anthony in the studio. Maybe suggest that he knows the answers, or he's not got a clue. I'm not sure.
You shouldn't have doubted yourself so early.
2 Bostik teams who are undefeated in their last 10. Can you name them? 3 Bostik divisions for you to choose out of 72 clubs. See what you come up with.
Question 2.
St Albans City versus East Thurrock United was the highest scoring game in the National League South at the weekend. But what was the full-time score? St Albans City played East Thurrock United. It was the highest scoring game in the National League South at the weekend. But what was the full-time score? Have you paid attention to your non-league games this week?
Dom looks confident. You look confident.
Haven't got a clue on that.
Question 3.
Which of these non-league sides who play in black and white are not nicknamed the Magpies? Which of these non-league sides who play in black and white are not nicknamed the Magpies? And your choices are Maidenhead United, Dereham Town, or Tooting and Mitcham United. Maidenhead United, Dereham Town, or Tooting and Mitcham United. Which of them are not nicknamed the Magpies?
Question 4.
The Queen Elizabeth II Stadium is the home ground of which London-based non-league club? The Queen Elizabeth II Stadium is the home ground of which London-based non-league club? This is your area, Anthony, isn't it, London?
Queen Elizabeth II.
That's the one.
Ground. Oh, good.
It is a ground, yes.
Hang on.
Question 5.
Final question tonight. There are 7 B teams in the Bostik divisions. Teams beginning with B. Can you name them? 7 teams. We'll give you a point for each. Beginning with the letter B across the Bostik divisions. But can you name them?
God.
Let us know how you get on. Official BOTN across social media, and we'll be back with the answers to the non-league football quiz after this.
You're listening to Back of the Net, powered by Promote UK. We're really good at what we do.
Times are changing. We now live in a digital world where 9 out of 10 people use the internet to look for local goods and services. Whether in front of a computer at home or on a mobile phone on the go, people expect to find what they want, when they want, quickly and easily. The question is, can your business be found? At Promote UK, we specialise in getting local businesses found online. One highly affordable package will give your business a stunning mobile responsive website, which we guarantee to get to the first page of Google and keep it there. And we take care of everything: copywriting, design, hosting. We even offer unlimited amends all year round for no extra charge. So, whilst you're busy focusing on your business, we're busy making sure it can be found online all year round. Start your Google Page 1 journey today with a free online health check by visiting promoteUKLimited.com. Promote UK. We're really good at what we do.
From Premiership to Playground, MH Goals has everything you need for an outstanding football match, including aluminium and steel football goals, nets, line marking machines, team shelters, boot wipers, and much more. Buy with confidence direct from the manufacturer with great prices available across our whole range of sports equipment. What's more, we offer fantastic discounts for all FA-affiliated clubs. We pride ourselves on British manufacturing. We make all our football goals here in the UK and conform to the latest British and European safety standards. So call MH Goals direct on 01502 711 298 or visit our online store at mhgoals.com.
Are you a budding footballer sitting your GCSEs next summer, wondering what to do next? Want to play football while studying for qualifications that will get you into university? Dorking Wanderers Football Club are now recruiting for their football academy for 2018-2019. Based at their brand new state-of-the-art Meadowbank Stadium, you'll be playing in the National Conference Youth Alliance against the best clubs in the area each week, as well as the prestigious FA Youth Cup. You'll be studying BTEC Level 3 qualifications, equivalent to 3 A-levels, alongside professional coaching from our UEFA qualified coaches. For information on trials and open evenings, visit dorkingwanderers.com/academy or email academy@dorkingwanderers.com.
Head to backofthenetsouth.co.uk tomorrow morning for video highlights and full match reaction of today's games. Back to your favourite non-league football show, powered by Promote UK. We're really good at what we do. Back of the net, where it matters.
So welcome back to the show tonight on Transfer Deadline Day. It's not Transfer Deadline Day across non-league, but we will be talking about Transfer Deadline Day and the effect that it may have on non-league football just a little bit later on. We've just done the non-league football quiz, and our pundits in the studio have tried to do the best they can, and we're going to find out who has the best non-league football brain.
It's time to see who has the best non-league football brain in the studio. Tweet your answers to @officialBOTN.
Yeah, do let us know your answers tonight and how you got on. James is tearing something up. Right, let's get on with the questions.
Question 1.
There are only 2 Bostik teams who are undefeated in their last 10, but can you name them? James, we'll go with you first.
I've gone for Billericay Town and Greenwich.
What did you get, Dom?
I've got Billericay and then I put Greenwich because I know they're doing well because we've got them Saturday.
They are playing very well at the moment.
Anthony?
I just wrote Billericay.
Oh, no!
I can tell you that the answers were Billericay Town.
Yes.
And Greenwich Borough.
Yes! Wicked.
There's a few teams that only lost 1 in their last 10. Morton Casuals, Carshalton Athletic and Leatherhead doing pretty well at the moment, but not quite the no defeats in 10 for the teams Greenwich Borough and Billericay Town. So full points for a couple of guys, Dom and James, and 1 point for Anthony. We're all off on the scoreboard, which is nice to see.
Yeah.
Question 2.
St Albans City versus East Thurrock United was the highest-scoring game in the National League South at the weekend. But what was the full-time score, James?
It was 7-2.
Dom?
I got 4-4.
I've got 7-2.
It was, I'm not sure what game you watching, Dom, but it was 7-2. St Albans City 7, East Thurrock United 2. The game was 3-2 at half-time. Sam Merson found 4 in front of a crowd of 603 at Clarence Park Stadium. So brilliant game there, especially if you're a St Albans City fan.
Question 3.
Which of these non-league sides who play in black and white are not nicknamed the Magpies? I gave you the options of Maidenhead United, Durham Town and Tooting and Mitcham United, James.
I've gone for Tooting and Mitcham.
Tooting.
I've gone for Tooting. I've gone for Tooting as well. Come on. It's
Yes.
like all in or all out. Come on.
The answer is Tooting and Mitcham
Yes.
United.
That's it.
And you can safely say you've done better than Peter.
I've done. That's it.
Bragging rights to you.
Question 4.
The Queen Elizabeth II Stadium is the home ground of which London-based non-league club, James?
I believe that's Enfield Town.
I've got Enfield.
Pete, who looks after London for the FA.
Yeah. I just went with. I said Ailey. I know it's not correct unless they've changed the name when they redone the ground, but I don't know. So.
Have you been to Averley recently?
Not since they've redone it. I've heard it's an amazing ground and great facilities, but I just figured it was close to the bridge. It was either that or Thurrock or Dartford.
So Anthony thought that it was one of the London clubs. You'd have been right in saying that. It was a London-based club, as we said. It was Enfield Town,
Yes,
so you got it right,
yes.
James and Dom.
Come on.
Question 5.
So this is your chance, Anthony, to make up the score because we're going to give you a point for each team. There are 7 teams beginning with B across the Bostik divisions. Can you name them? So first of all, we'll go to James. No writing any additional names down, by the way, once James has given his answers. How many did you get, James?
I got 5, to be honest. I went for 5.
How many did you get, Dom?
5.
Anthony?
5.
Okay, what 5 have you got, James?
I've got Billericay Town, Brightlingsea Regent, Burgess Hill Town, Bowers and Pitsea, and then I went Barking.
Any variations on that?
I've got Brentwood.
Yeah, I've got Brentwood, Borehamwood.
Boreham Wood.
I don't know why I said that, because that was
They're
just
national.
That just went out of the.
Leave him to. It's fine. Let him get his answer out.
Then I trust that out and I wrote Brightlingsea. Then I've got Bowers, Barking, and Billericay. There you go.
Okay, yeah, you could have had Bowers and Pitsea, Brentwood Town, Barking, Bury Town, Burgess Hill Town, Brightlingsea region, or Billericay Town. No teams beginning with B in the Bostik South, interestingly enough.
Yeah,
if you're into your stats, there's one for you and one for Adam, who's on social media tonight, to perhaps tweet out. There you go, if people are following us on social media. Okay, so that is the non-league football quiz. We're going to find out right now who had the most answers with Remy. We will hopefully hear from Remy in a moment, but we're all confident here. Right, let's see if Remy can give us the answers.
Okay, so Pete is going to be really unhappy at how well Anthony did. He got 8 on the board, but it wasn't enough to finish any higher than last place, because Dom got 9 and James got 10.
Yes!
James has won again.
James is top for another week.
Yes!
Yeah, this happens quite a lot. So James is the winner of the non-league football quiz this week. Unless you did better, let us know. Official BOTN across social media. Thanks very much, Remy. Okay, right, we're going to go back to talking right now about the finances across non-league football. So many talking points when we're looking at clubs that have had financial difficulties. We've mentioned the likes of Dulwich Hamlet this season, the brilliant story that was Lewis. There are plenty of famous clubs in and around. We touched on Portsmouth earlier on. Leyton Orient are one at the moment that are struggling in the National League. The likes of Palace and Southampton have also been through that turmoil. Leeds United, another name not quite dropped as far as non-league football. I think Wrexham have had their problems as well, and they've dropped down into the non-league. Boston United entered administration in 2008 as well. All these clubs having problems. Examples again in non-league: Halifax Town, they entered administration in 2002 after over years of having problems. They've been an established football club for 100 years, entered administration in 2002, huge tax debts, and they had a debt of over £2 million. That kind of deficit, Anthony, is so difficult to make up. Where do you go as a Bostik team and a non-league team if you have those kind of problems? What should your reaction be? We looked at the likes of Lewis. What things can you do when you get to that situation?
I think it's what we've said earlier. I think it's about having a strategy and having a long-term plan and almost seeing it as a savings account rather than just a debit account. It's hard because, and I was speaking to Joe Widdowson, who's at Leyton Orient, and he's played at pro clubs, and what he said was he actually loves it there because he's got people like Ross Embleton and people like that who don't just talk tactics, but they look at the social side as well. And I think if a club is going to be successful, it has to work with these young potential players who are developing over a period of time and make the club somewhere that players want to come to and want to stay at. I don't think there's a short-term fix, and I think anyone who does literally will end up in this position, Ben.
There was a really interesting story around Halifax because at a meeting of the Football Association back in 2008-2009 season, they had a discussion. They decided not to place them in either the Conference Premier North or the Northern Premier League because of their financial difficulties. Halifax appealed against the decision to remove them from that football conference. It was rejected, and they were accepted to play in the Northern Premier Division 1 North. And they played in that division, and now they've risen back up the leagues. We talked about this thing with Lewis starting again as well. Halifax now currently 18th in the National League. Their average gate is pretty impressive, 1,762, which is not bad for a club that's had to reinvent themselves. They've got Tom Denton in their team, is the league's top scorer this season. And last night, interestingly, they played Leyton Orient. It was 2-1 to Leyton Orient, another team that are now having that same financial difficulty. Does it help somewhat if you're in the shoes of Leyton Orient and you can see teams like Halifax perhaps not getting beaten last night, but the fact that you can reinvent yourself and you have to do it the hard way?
Yeah, I mean Hereford's a good example as well. They've gone, back to county league football. Step 5, I think they dropped back into, but they get good gates. They had an FA Vars final where they got to Wembley, and they get I think the club's being better run in general. So I think I think there is there is a way round it, but you kind of have to drop down some leagues. But equally with some of these clubs, if they're struggling all the time, surely it would make more sense to take that plunge and perhaps win a few games, perhaps get supporters back on side. I mean, I think Chester, they're one of the reasons they've said for the massive losses is that they're not getting the gates, and they're not getting the gates because they're not winning games. So logically, cut your budget, go down a league, start winning some games, get more people through the gate, engage with the local community. It's not rocket science, is it? I think, but clubs seem to get it wrong a lot.
And we look at the likes of Rushden and Diamonds as well, really well-known football club, entered administration in 2011, dissolved in 2011 as well. They had a real turmoil, that club, and now again they're having to work their way back up in one of the counties leagues, Division 1, where they are. Tough for a club that were doing so well in the National League.
Yes, they were. They were a real high-profile example of a team which really suffered financially, and again Kettering is another example which suffered financially off the pitch. It's disheartening to see teams who were so established, of the likes of Rushden and Diamonds, Kettering, I'll name those two as another example again, to struggle financially off the pitch. They just need to look at the example which Dom mentioned of Hereford in basically rebuilding the side again, still getting the decent gate receipts in, and rebuilding the club again at a lower league. Woking did exactly the same when they got relegated from the conference back in 2009. They were not getting the gate receipts in. The level of football wasn't acceptable on the pitch. They got relegated down to the Conference South. They rebuilt the gates. The football improved, and as a result, they have come out the other side as a better club.
AFC Rushden and Diamonds, as they're known now.
That's right,
They play in the Evo Stick South East, and they're currently top of the league, 3 points clear of Beaconsfield Town as well. So I think they're unbeaten in 18 across all competitions. So it can be done, can reinvent yourself, and perhaps one day we'll see them back at National League level. We mentioned that we've talked around this subject. It is so difficult for clubs. Is there anything else that we can do when we look at the league setup, Anthony? When we talk about the financial situation, everybody looks at Manchester City, but is there anything else that we can do to try and make it a bit fairer?
I would always love to see more English players being promoted up the leagues, and I think when we had the limit on foreign players, it helped English football, and it helped non-league football and the lower league clubs. So I think that would be the first thing that I would think about. But in terms of from the financial position, it's such a big business. When you talk about the media and you talk about TV, broadcasting rights, etc., and some of the funds that these owners have, which one could say is almost like a bottomless pit of money, which others just can't compete with. So if there were some limits on what you could spend in each league, I think that would start to make a difference.
And Dom, we look across the Bostik Premier Division and the Bostik North and South, and there are teams that you could pick out straight away that you'd say, well, they've got the biggest budget in the league. They've got the second biggest budget. We all know who they are. It's quite well known that certain teams can put more money at it. Is that fair and right, and can we change that? Or should we change that?
I don't think you'll change football. I think it's been like that since day one. I think it's a sport that captures people's imagination, and a lot of people jump on the bandwagon and enjoy. I'm sure Glenn Tamplin at the moment is loving it. He's in that changing room. He's buzzing off a team that's winning. That's a great thing to be involved in when you're in a changing room and you're enjoying all of that. So I don't think you're ever going to get away from that. I've been at senior cup finals with clubs that have spent a lot of money, and I can see the committee are living the dream a little bit in those sort of finals and those things. So I don't think you're ever going to change it, really. I think. It's a hard one. I think if you look at last year, I don't think Tooting had the biggest budget in our league last year, and they won it. I think Bognor definitely didn't have a big budget in the Prem last year, and they got promoted into Conference South. So there is still the opportunity for talented people, good coaches, good managers, people who are good at putting a side together that functions and works well to still have some success. But yeah, it is quite hard sometimes. It's hard when you have your players picked off as well, which is always a tricky one when there's someone with more money than you. But I suppose only Man City are the only club in England that don't have their players cherry picked. So
I think you talked about that, and I think Dom makes a brilliant point. If you couldn't move within the same league, that would have such an impact. If you could only ever go up or down, players might not be in such a hurry to move around, and it might bring a little bit more loyalty, or people might think before they sign, and therefore I think that would have a serious impact.
Is it about money at this level for players? When we talk about non-league, we've always attributed non-league football to being a very honest level of football. Go down to this level. It's not about money. I don't want to watch the likes of City United. There's people that say they're bored of the Premier League. Let's go to the Bostic leagues because it's not about money. It's about real football, real players. Is that in danger of being taken away if Billericay are doing what they're doing and other clubs do similar?
I think you get a blend of people. You get young lads who are desperate to kick on in the game, who will play for free. If it gives them a platform to do well. It's the same in all walks of life. You get the people, like the plodders and the people who want to strive. You get people who are motivated by money. You get people who are motivated by success. You get people who do it for the sheer enjoyment, like being involved in football. So you get a whole mix, really. I think if you want to do well, often you need a few quid. But like I said, the Bognor example, the Tooting example, those teams have got a group of people together that all want to do this, do right by each other, do right by the club, and have success. So it can be done, but I think obviously money's always a factor. I think it's hard as well nowadays, maybe even more so, because it's quite hard for younger people now to get on the property ladder, to get mortgages. Financially, it's harder and less jobs out there probably, and I think a lot of them rely on their football money a lot more than perhaps when I used to play 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
I think there's also a sense of loyalty which is still within the league. I've got an example right in front of me now. One of the best players to have come through this season within the Bostic Premier is Reece Alassane. At Dulwich, he had a really torrid time with coming back with injuries at his time at Crystal Palace, and during the Christmas period and up to January, there was a lot of interest with league clubs. It's been announced actually just a moment ago via Twitter from Dulwich Hamlet that he is going to remain with the club until the end of the season. He could very rightly have gone to a higher league club, and I think that's his aspirations in general, to stay with Dulwich Hamlet for the remainder of the season, because they have stuck with him and taken him on despite his injury. So I feel there is still a sense of loyalty within the non-league, and that is a good example.
Almost the perfect link there from talking about finances to talking about the transfer window, and we're going to do just that right after the news, and that's coming up after this.
You're listening to Back of the Net, powered by Promote UK. We're really good at what we do.
Times are changing. We now live in a digital world where 9 out of 10 people use the internet to look for local goods and services. Whether in front of a computer at home or on a mobile phone on the go, people expect to find what they want, when they want, quickly and easily. The question is, can your business be found? At Promote UK, we specialise in getting local businesses found online. One highly affordable package will give your business a stunning mobile responsive website, which we guarantee to get to the first page of Google and keep it there. And we take care of everything: copywriting, design, hosting. We even offer unlimited amends all year round for no extra charge. So, whilst you're busy focusing on your business, we're busy making sure it can be found online all year round. Start your Google Page One journey today with a free online health check by visiting promoteUKLimited.com. Promote UK. We're really good at what we do.
From Premiership to Playground, MH Goals has everything you need for an outstanding football match, including aluminium and steel football goals, nets, line marking machines, team shelters, boot wipers, and much more. Buy with confidence direct from the manufacturer with great prices available across our whole range of sports equipment. What's more, we offer fantastic discounts for all FA affiliated clubs. We pride ourselves on British manufacturing. We make all our football goals here in the UK and conform to the latest British and European safety standards. So call MH Goals direct on 01502 711 298 or visit our online store at mhgoals.com.
Are you a budding footballer sitting your GCSEs next summer, wondering what to do next? Want to play football while studying for qualifications that will get you into university? Dorking Wanderers Football Club are now recruiting for their football academy for 2018-2019. Based at their brand new state-of-the-art Meadowbank Stadium, you'll be playing in the National Conference Youth Alliance against the best clubs in the area each week, as well as the prestigious FA Youth Cup. You'll be studying BTEC Level 3 qualifications, equivalent to 3 A-levels, alongside professional coaching from our UEFA qualified coaches. For information on trials and open evenings, visit dorkingwanderers.com/academy or email academy@dorkingwanderers.com.
Head to backofthenetsouth.co.uk tomorrow morning for video highlights and full match reaction of today's games. Back to your favourite non-league football show, powered by Promote UK. We're really good at what we do. Back of the net, where it matters. With all the latest news from across non-league football, online at backofthenetsouth.co.uk and broadcasting live on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. This is Back of the Net News.
Here's the top news stories at 8 o'clock. The EBAC Northern League has responded to the Leagues Committee's decision to turn down their proposal for a new regional Step 4 league by announcing that they've lodged an appeal. The league was intended to help facilitate an ascent into the third tier of non-league for Northern League teams. The changes continue at crisis-hit Chester FC as 4 new directors have been co-opted onto the club's board. The club desperately need to raise £50,000 if they're to avoid going out of business within months. Long-standing Bedford Town chairman David Howell has sold the Evostick South East club to a local consortium. Howell has confirmed that the Eagles are now under new ownership, with first-team manager John Taylor part of the group, which now controls the club. Evostick Northern Premier League club Marine have announced plans to delay the intended stadium upgrade until the summer of 2019, coinciding with the Mariners' 125th anniversary. The club took the decision following the review of the requirements and time it would take to apply for grant funding. And finally, Nick Davis has resigned as manager of Bostik League South club Sittingbourne following their 3-1 defeat against Horsham on Saturday. The side have lost 9 in their last 11 and as a direct result has slipped down to 14th in the Bostik South table. That's the latest news stories. I'm James Cummins.
Have your say. Get in touch on social media. Just search official BOTN.
So welcome back to the show tonight. We're here through until 9 o'clock. Plenty more to talk about this evening. We've done our non-league football quiz and we've talked all about finances in football, which takes us nicely onto our second topic tonight, and that is the transfer window. It is, of course, deadline day today. It doesn't affect non-league, but still plenty of business across the Bostik leagues this week. The question is, does it have an effect on non-league football, this transfer window, perhaps the prices and the money that we see going through? We saw the likes of Virgil van Dijk getting sold for £75 million earlier on in the window. Aubameyang today, 56 million. He's gone to Arsenal. Giroud has joined Chelsea from Arsenal. But James, does it have an effect lower down the league? Does that have a knock-on effect to the Bostik leagues?
I think it does. I think that lower league teams that are in the Bostik leagues, and if you look even further up for the National League and North and South, the transfer window isn't so restricted. So with a longer transfer window in the lower league, you could see players leave at any time, and we've seen plenty of examples before in the past where you have key players who are playing really, really well, and because there is such a longer window where there's no restrictions, a higher league club could simply cherry pick the best of your players and could seriously disrupt or make or break your season.
An interesting topic to turn to would be to Dom and to talk about signings perhaps and loan signings, and you've made some.
Yeah, we've I think it's probably going to be announced. We've just taken Tom Tolfrey for Dorking and Anthony Oakes from Dorking. So yeah, sort of.
Is that an exclusive that we've got?
I think so. Hopefully Mark's announced it now. But yeah, so we've had a couple of deadline day transfers today. So.
Do you find, Dom, that when we look at the prices for, say, Virgil van Dijk as an example, £75 million he went for to Liverpool. will that have an effect down the leagues, trickling all the way through to the National League and the Bostik Premier Division and even the Bostik South, when it comes to valuing a defender? So if you're a side now in the Bostik Premier Division and somebody wants your centre-back, you look at it and say, you know what, he's got that value to us. Virgil van Dijk's just gone for 75 million. Okay, well, he's worth $4,000.
Yeah.
Does that have an effect?
I think even more because there's so many players coming into the country, and the drop down of players as they go down the league, you're going to end up paying more for players anyway, because players that were at some stage playing League Two are now probably playing Conference South. So perhaps not in terms of the measurement against what the big boys are paying out, but the flip side of that is the quality's improving as you go down the leagues, and with that, you know, the money being paid out is quite substantial.
I guess one of the other questions to ask is, will there ever be a transfer window at this level of football, and is it needed?
I mean, personally, I don't know how you'd be able to operate just the level I'm at step 4. I just think it would be so hard, given the commitments that people have outside of football, to tie it in. So you had a window at the start of the season and a window in January. I think, you know, if everyone was completely committed to playing football, it would give you a bit more of a stable platform. But realistically, I mean, we have real life situations where players have a kid, can't commit to the same, you know, through no fault of their own, their circumstances change, and they can't commit to the same levels of training, travel, and we get things like injuries, and we don't have the ability to get those players back quick enough that you would in the pro game, where they're getting rehab every day and treatment every day, scans, you know, instantly, operations instantly, and so it'd be a hard one. It would be a hard one for us to manage. Maybe in the conference, and maybe in the Conference South, because a lot of those teams now are almost full time, almost professional clubs. But I don't know. It'd be very tricky at our level. It would have killed me this year, put it that way, with the amount of injuries we've had, to not be able to bring people in until January.
So how do you get the best? We'll start with you again, Dom. How do you get the best out of the Bostik transfer system, the way it is right now?
I mean, I suppose you're always on the lookout for people that are not playing at other clubs locally. You're on the lookout for young talent, players from the lower levels. I mean, you're sort of shopping all over the place, really. And I think every club's got their own, you know, their own approach to it, really. Every manager's got their own approach. I'm quite lucky. I've got 2 or 3 managers in Sussex that have been a big help this year. But yeah, I mean, you're looking for players that are perhaps sitting on benches, or playing at smaller clubs, and so you then look to drag them in, I suppose. But yeah, there's all sorts of different ways to do it, and different clubs have different approaches.
And looking at a team in the Bostik Premier Division, Billericay have signed Callum Butcher today. James, they've made a signing on deadline day, even though it isn't officially for them. Again, the spending continues.
It does continue, and there was a lot of frenzy about this earlier on. Even I got involved, because Glenn Tamplin had put a tweet earlier on saying he had signed somebody from Millwall with 38 appearances, and immediately, even though everybody does it, they immediately think of the high-ranked players. Unfortunately, it wasn't Tim Cahill, because he's just gone back to Millwall, but the one that came into my head immediately was Steve Morrison, that came into my head. And if you would have thought about this a couple of years ago, with the amount of spending that has gone on with Billericay, everybody would have laughed at you straight out of the door and into the car park. But now, because the amount of spending has gone dramatically through the roof at Billericay, this is the kind of player that you would naturally now suspect to come in. But it's still a big signing for Glenn Tamplin and for Billericay.
Yeah, he signed on loan. He's joined the former Millwall man from Mansfield on loan. The loan system, Dom, is it a good way to perhaps bolster your squad at this level? Yeah, so
we've massively used it this year, more than I've ever, probably in the previous 10 seasons I've been a manager. I've probably used it on the odd occasion. This year, because of the circumstances we've been in, I mean, we've probably had a loan player in probably since October at different stages. We've had various loans in. And they can be really useful. You can pick up some really good players that are just perhaps not getting game time out of our clubs. We've got a lad called George Landays, who's part of Lewis's squad. Very good player, but obviously they've got a lot of good players. They're doing ever so well at the moment. He's not got the the amount of minutes, and Lewis have loaned him out to us twice this year, and he's a player that, you know, he's a starting player for us. And as I said, we've just got toll free from Dorking for a month. We've got a situation where we're in the Sussex Senior Cup, but because we've had such a turnover of players, most of our players are cup tied. So the loans have been really useful in that respect as well, because we've been able to play them in that cup. So it's been a funny season.
We've obviously can remember the days before the transfer window in the top leagues of English football, and I think you could sign players up until about March, which I think is when the cut-off point is for the Bostik leagues. We've now got a comparison where we're focusing on Bostik and the non-league football, and we're looking today at the transfer deadline day. Which is better in your opinion, Anthony? Having a window like you do today, a bit of madness around with the likes of Arsenal and Chelsea signing players, or as we look at our level of football here, no window?
I think having the transfer window closing at both ends of the season, when it closes in August and also in January, just causes coaches and managers a problem, purely because it unsettles what you're trying to build. And I appreciate lower leagues. There's changes every time. Managers and clubs can put in a 7-dayer, and your player's gone. But I think when you're starting to look up the leagues, knowing that the window's coming and that someone might slap in a transfer request at the last minute, that just causes disruption. And when you're trying to build a stable side, or trying to avoid relegation, for example, or go for promotion, losing that one player could be the impact that you really don't want. I think when we come to non-league, I think the loan system works. I think there are players in the higher leagues and leagues below, and I'll give you an example at Welling. Jamie brought in Anthony Achapong, who I've known for a number of years, a very quality player, signed at Dulwich, and then starts at Welling, which you think you can't get in the team at Dulwich. You go into the Welling side, and then you almost go unbeaten for a few games while he's on loan. So I think there are definitely pros to it, and there are some cons, obviously, for the sides who can't afford to bring in a player from Mansfield just like that. And we don't know the bits that are behind that. But I think it just unsettles a side having two transfer windows the way it currently is. And I think if it just closed, everybody would know where they stand.
Here's a question: Do you think the transfer window should be the same for managers? So,
that's a good question, actually.
Would that put more onus on chairmen to not employ people that are not fit for purpose?
Are you looking across non-league as well?
Yeah, I mean in general, but I mean especially in the professional game. I mean, it's just a question. But how many managers, do 2 months and get binned off? Then another manager comes in, gets 3 months. Would it be a different situation if you could only get rid of a manager at the start of the season in January?
I think that's a great suggestion, to be honest. I think it's going back to the criminal element I mentioned earlier on about in the radio show. I think that's a very, very good idea, because the amount of time that managers are given at any level of the game is crazy, absolutely crazy. How can in any profession, whether it's football or outside of football, for example, Crystal Palace with De Boer earlier on in the season, how can you gauge how somebody will do in just over a month? That's no time to settle in. There's no time to settle in a strategy or a work ethic into a team. So a great suggestion, Dom. I would be very much for that. That's a really good idea.
Taking it back to the Bostik leagues and non-league football, we looked at examples in the January transfer window of teams that have perhaps lost out, shall we say, to the fact that there is a January transfer window in the football leagues. Malden and Tiptree lost key players Ryan Gondor and Junior Ogadegi Ozakwe. I think I've said that right. Every time I struggle, we'll call him Junior, we usually do, as they were both snapped up by Colchester United on 18-month contracts at the start of January. So they've had 7 arrivals since then. They've even gone as far as Finland with 2 players. The results have been a little bit indifferent during January. Now, is this down to that transformation, and is that directly linked to the transfer window in the Football League? Is that an effect? Does it have an effect in the Bostik leagues?
But wouldn't you want, if you're a Bostik league manager, and I'm looking at Dom, you'd want your players to go into the leagues. That's promotion. That shows that you've done something correct. So I think them going to Colchester is a great thing. It's more about when players move locally, that I think you've got to worry. And I think then you've just got to say to yourself, how does this impact on our performance when we lose a player to our biggest rival down the road?
Yeah.
Are you actually saying then it's better, this transfer window that we see closed today is good news for the Bostik leagues, because if it wasn't for that window, the likes of Colchester United could pick off players all year round?
Potentially, yeah. And I think, like I said, it's an aspiration. I was speaking to Toby, who's down at Dover last week, and he was saying, look, he really wants to get back into the leagues. He's playing there, he's injured at the moment, but he wants to get back into the leagues. Now, had he been playing and scoring, this would have been a great opportunity for him to get that chance. And I think for a club, that's great promotion, because what they're saying is, we're working with these young players who can find themselves back into the leagues, and that will attract younger players. I think players will want to go to that club because they'll feel like there's a pathway and a route to the professional game.
Yeah, Morton and Tiptree have won in their last 4. They won 5 on the bounce before the January window opened. Cheshunt, another example, they're languishing towards the bottom of the Bostik North, and they felt the need to overhaul their squad this January. They've signed 11 players from all around the Bostik leagues over the course of January since Edwards' appointment. Does that naturally come, Dom, with a new manager?
Yeah, new manager. He's got a lot of contacts. Probably wouldn't have gone in there if he didn't think he could get players in, and I can't imagine he was too happy with the squad he probably inherited. So yeah, I think it always happens, doesn't it? Managers come in and want to bring in players they know or players they think they can do the job for them.
James, we've seen plenty of transfers within the Bostik divisions over the last week on its own, just players moving around.
There's been plenty of players moving around. I can just look at the table we've got at the moment. We keep with the Premier League.
It's a pick of a few.
The pick of a few really is Matt Darage, who's gone 2-2 in Mitcham. He was a quite accomplished defender at Merstham, and he's gone across and joined Frank Wilson's side. I'm just looking also Liam McDevitt as well from Horsham, who's gone over to Chipstead. How much of a loss was that for you with him moving over to Chipstead?
Yeah, we didn't want to lose him, but at the same time he wasn't playing enough football. He's a lovely lad, lives quite far away, and doesn't particularly with the travel coming down and getting sort of 10-15 minutes here and there, probably wasn't playing enough for his liking. But he's a good genuine lad.
There's another guy just to mention before we go on, and that is that Mikael Miller, of course, from Carl Shulton, who's gone for a massive jump. He's made a move to Hamilton Academical after scoring 25 goals this season. So it's a good advert for the Bostik leagues and players moving up. But of course, with there being the transfer window for higher league teams, it is potentially massively damaging as well.
We'll talk more about the transfer window and the effects that it has when you go down to the Bostik levels very shortly. Right now, we're going to turn our attentions to Super Sub, go to the phone lines and say a very good evening to Liam Smith, the Tunbridge Angels player. Liam, very good evening to you.
Good evening.
How is the season going at Tunbridge Angels so far?
It's been a bit of a big hill and a downhill. It's been a bumpy road. We've had a few wins and a few losses, but we thought we'd do a lot better this season than what we have. But we've still got a bit of time to make it back. So we'll just see how we end up at the end of the season.
We saw you recently in an incredible game where you took on Lowestoft. It really was end to end. Have you set targets for the rest of the season for the team?
We said there's a certain amount of games that we've got to win to get towards the playoffs. Obviously, mathematically it's still possible. If we go on a win streak or something, then there's no chance that we can't get there. So we got so really we can't lose many games now. So
And individual targets, do you do that as a player? Do you set yourself some individual targets?
I think it's just more of just working hard and making sure that you put at least an 8 or 9 out of 10 every game, as if everyone's putting in a 9 or 10 every single game. And there's that one person that's maybe not playing very well, you can carry them along. But if everybody's playing 6 out of 10 every game, like it showed at some games, then you're going to lose no matter the team in the league.
Have you listened to our Super Sub game over the last few weeks?
I haven't that much, but I've seen a little bit about it, seen the league table and that, and had a brief little look at it.
The most important thing, obviously, the league table that you want to be at the top of. And I can tell you that if you want to be at the top of that tonight, you've got to beat Sam Mott, who last week did an incredible job in 46 seconds. Also Quincy Rowe, worth a mention as well. He did it in 48. And to avoid all embarrassment, to beat Jack Cooley, you need to beat 1 minute and 54 seconds. All you've got to do is substitute the correct answer for an incorrect answer. It is that simple. It sounds really simple. We all know in the reality that it isn't. We've got the stopwatch ready to go for you.
Yep.
And your time starts now. Name a club that Alan Shearer has played for.
Man United.
What do Mark Clattenburg, Michael Oliver and Kevin Friend all have in common?
They play football.
What are West Ham's fans forever blowing?
Balloons.
Ellen Road is the home ground of which team?
Tunbridge Angels.
What nationality is Luis Suarez?
Brazilian.
How many linesmen are there used in a league match?
4.
Alexis Sanchez has just signed for which team?
Spurs.
Which Premier League team are known as the Eagles?
Tottenham.
Finish the Bostik South team name. Cray.
Football Club.
What reality TV programme did Jamie Vardy's wife Rebecca feature in before Christmas?
Silent Witness.
And stop the clock. I would have liked to have watched that episode of Silent Witness. Well done. How did you think you got on?
Not too bad. I can see where you want to say the correct answer.
Yeah, that is the game. It seems easy. All you got to do is not say the correct answer and substitute it for something else. Yeah. We're going to find out where you are in our leaderboard and also have a look at some of your answers. You had 46 seconds to beat if you wanted to go top of the leaderboard. I can tell you that you did it in 56 seconds and you are in 6th place, and there are now 14 players in our leaderboard, so 6th isn't bad. UEFA Cup spot. Or Europa League for the younger supporters. Some of your answers, great. Alan Shearer, it's a good one to kick off with. Never played for Man U. Of course, nearly went to Manchester United back in 1995. We gave you Clattenburg, Oliver and Friend all play football. Not sure how they'd get on. Particularly pleased with your answer to question number 3 when we said, what are West Ham fans forever blowing? You went for balloons. I was relieved at that. Also, we mentioned what reality TV show did Jamie Vardy's wife Rebecca feature in, and you said Silent Witness. Maybe she'll play a part of that in the future. Liam, thank you ever so much for coming on the show and playing Super Sub. We of course wish yourself and Tunbridge Angels all the best for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. That was Liam Smith, the Tunbridge Angels player, playing Super Sub. We've got Corey Davidson up next after this.
You're listening to Back of the Net, powered by Promote UK. We're really good at what we do.
Times are changing. We now live in a digital world where 9 out of 10 people use the internet to look for local goods and services. Whether in front of a computer at home or on a mobile phone on the go, people expect to find what they want, when they want, quickly and easily. The question is, can your business be found? At Promote UK, we specialise in getting local businesses found online. One highly affordable package will give your business a stunning mobile responsive website, which we guarantee to get to the first page of Google and keep it there. And we take care of everything: copywriting, design, hosting. We even offer unlimited amends all year round for no extra charge. So, whilst you're busy focusing on your business, we're busy making sure it can be found online all year round. Start your Google Page 1 journey today with a free online health check by visiting promoteUKLimited.com. Promote UK. We're really good at what we do.
From Premiership to Playground, MH Goals has everything you need for an outstanding football match, including aluminium and steel football goals, nets, line marking machines, team shelters, boot wipers, and much more. Buy with confidence direct from the manufacturer with great prices available across our whole range of sports equipment. What's more, we offer fantastic discounts for all FA affiliated clubs. We pride ourselves on British manufacturing. We make all our football goals here in the UK UK and conform to the latest British and European safety standards. So call MH Goals direct on 01502 711 298 or visit our online store at mhgoals.com.
Are you a budding footballer sitting your GCSEs next summer, wondering what to do next? Want to play football while studying for qualifications that will get you into university? Dorking Wanderers Football Club are now recruiting for their football academy for 2018-2019. Based at their brand new state-of-the-art Meadowbank Stadium, you'll be playing in the National Conference Youth Alliance against the best clubs in the area each week, as well as the prestigious FA Youth Cup. You'll be studying BTEC Level 3 qualifications, equivalent to 3 A-levels, alongside professional coaching from our UEFA qualified coaches. For information on trials and open evenings, visit dorkingwanderers.com/academy or email academy@dorkingwanderers.com.
Head to backofthenetsouth.co.uk tomorrow morning for video highlights and full match reaction of today's games. Back to your favourite non-league football show, powered by Promote UK. We're really good at what we do. Back of the net, where it matters.
Welcome back to the show tonight. Back of the net on a Wednesday, as always, between 7 and 9. Got plenty more to talk about the transfer deadline day today. We're going to look across the Bostik leagues and see what effect that has, and look at the rules across the Bostik league as well to tell you exactly how transfers work in the league. Right now, we're going to go to the phone lines again, and Corey Davidson, the Whittam Town winger, is on the line. Very good evening to you, Corey.
Good evening, fellas. How are you keeping?
Yeah, really good, thank you. How is the season going at Whittam Town this year?
It's been a big improvement from the start of the season. Obviously, there was a few losses and stuff, but I think recently we've been showing signs that we're a team to fear. We've been picking up some good results. Obviously, we were pretty unlucky the weekend with a 1-0 defeat to Ware, but in general, I think we've been playing pretty well.
And that sort of motivation every week, do you set new challenges as a team, as an individual? How do you keep yourself motivated every week?
I think, well, the gaffer speaks about just going out and getting results and working hard for each other. Individually, I try to get on the score sheet as much as possible, try to be the main man, score as many goals as possible. But again, it's a team game, and without the lads around me, I wouldn't be doing as well as I am.
What's achievable this year? What can you achieve?
As a team, I think playoffs aren't out of our reach. I mean, there's always that possibility, and at the minute, that's what we're talking about. I mean, we need to pick up as many points as possible throughout the games, but I think playoffs is definitely reachable. And just in terms of personal, I want to get at least 20 goals, and I know that's doable, 100%.
You always see teams at the end that go on runs. There's always one team in most divisions that go on that run, and it's an unbelievable winning run that takes them from nowhere into the playoffs. And like you say, there's so many examples to use of that can keep your motivation going every week.
Oh, of course. I mean, you do. I mean, in non-league, things happen. And I mean, with the lads in the team, the spirit, I definitely think we have the team to do it, 100%. And I think people are starting to see that as well. Like, we've picked up results where people thought they're not going to win that game. We're surprising a few people, so it's definitely possible.
And tonight you've set yourself, obviously, a few different targets because you're about to play Super Sub with us this evening. Do you know much about the feature?
I know a little bit. I mean, it's a different test, isn't it? So I'll see how I get on.
And you have to beat Sam Mott at the moment. He's done it in 46 seconds last week if you want to be top of the leaderboard. Jack Corley is 1 minute and 54, so there's quite a difference there. So all you got to do is substitute the correct answer for any incorrect answer. It sounds so simple, if only it were. We're going to get We're going to get your time onto our clock right now. You know what time you've got to beat. Let's get the time on the clock, and let's start now. Name a club that Alan Shearer has played for.
Liverpool.
What do Mark Clattenburg, Michael Oliver and Kevin Friend all have in common?
Cousins.
What are West Ham fans forever blowing?
Balloons.
Ellen Road is the home ground of which team?
Newcastle.
Which nationality is Luis Suarez?
Irish.
How many linesmen are used in a league match?
5.
Alexis Sanchez has just signed for which team?
Chelsea.
Which Premier League team are known as the Eagles?
Liverpool.
Finish the Bostik team name. Cray.
Athletic.
What reality TV programme did Jamie Vardy's wife Rebecca feature in before Christmas?
Geordie Shore.
Stop the clock. Stop the clock right there. That seemed to me that was a pretty good effort. I've got a feeling that you're going to be very close to Mr. Sam Mott. Do you think you did well?
Yeah, I thought I done pretty well there. Was it? Maybe.
I just have this feeling that it's going to be very close. Right, we're going to have a look at some of your answers now. So, some of your answers were, you said Liverpool for Alan Shearer. Yeah, he obviously didn't go there. That Mark Clatterbird, Michael Oliver and Kevin Friend were all cousins. West Ham fans were forever blowing balloons, which is exactly the same as Liam said, and we're very grateful for that. Ellen Road is the home ground of Newcastle, according to you, and Luis Suarez is Irish, if only for the Irish contingent.
Yeah, exactly.
May have changed a little bit of history, and Jamie Vardy's wife
100%.
Rebecca featured in Geordie Shore, according to you. Maybe she could play that part. Okay, so you needed to beat Sam Mott, who did it in 46 seconds last week. We thought that was a really good time. I can tell you that you did it better. You did it in 42 seconds.
Ah, decent.
That is a really decent time. Really decent time.
I'm impressed with that.
You are top. We're impressed with that. You're top of the leaderboard. Corey Davidson, Whittam Town, top 42 seconds. That is going to take some beating between now and the end of the season.
Brilliant. I'm happy enough with that. Thanks, fellas.
Well, thank you ever so much for coming on the show. Best of luck for the rest of the season. We hope that you get your 20 goals, and if you can reach the playoffs as well, then that would be a hell of a season.
Thanks a lot, fellas. I appreciate you having me on.
No problem. Corey Davidson, top of the leaderboard right now. 42 seconds to do that, James. Very impressive.
That's extremely impressive. I think that's going to be almost unbeatable, I think. Great effort. That's a really, really good effort. Well done, mate.
So plenty more to talk about between now and the end of the show. We're going to go back to talking about transfer deadline day. So many deals going on around the Premier League. We're looking at the effects that it has in non-league football, particularly in the Bostik leagues. We've seen so many transfers over the last week. Quite a few important questions that need to be asked. And the first one is, how do the transfers work in the Bostik League? Dom, you're in a brilliant position to tell us, being the manager of Horsham.
Yes, you put a 7-day in most instances, unless they're on contract. If you put 7-day in, after 7 days, you can then talk to the player. Supposedly, you're not meant to talk to them before, but some managers decide to do that. I think it's called tapping up. But so you put 7-day in. After 7 days, you're allowed to speak to that player. Obviously, you try and agree some form of deal, and then after the 7 days, providing the player's not on contract, then and they don't owe the club money or anything like that, the player's then released and we can sign them straight away. Players on contract, obviously, it's just like the pro game. You've got to negotiate either the contract to be cancelled or a fee for the player. So yeah, they're the two main ones.
And there is, and Anthony, you point this out, there is a deadline, if you like. It's the end of March, where the final time that you can make changes to your squad, similar to what it used to be like in the old Premier League days. So there is a deadline on it, and I guess when it comes to that critical period of the season, similar to what we're seeing in the transfer window now, it can be quite frantic across non-league clubs.
Oh yeah, because between the end of March and April, that could be the difference between finishing mid-table or finishing in the promotion or relegation spots. And what a lot of teams seem to do, and we were talking about this in the break, is maybe dual register a few players just to make sure that they've got the strength and depth. Should there be injuries or players who, like Dom said earlier, can't make it to particular occasions. And the last thing you want is not to be able to field a side, because obviously then you're at risk of getting a fine and stuff. So you tend to find that managers sort of go all out to speak to as many different managers as they can to find out who they can have if the situation arises, and put those registrations through as quickly as possible.
We mentioned players as well that get the opportunity to move, and we saw a couple of players move to Colchester United from the Bostik leagues. Also worth mentioning Mikael Miller, who moved from Carshalton to Hamerton Academical, having scored 25 goals this season. It just shows that at this level, players are being watched, that Jamie Vardy effect that we talked about. Anything can happen, and clubs have to be, James, almost on their guard a little bit days like today and throughout January.
Oh, certainly. I think, like we said earlier on in the show, because there is such a larger period in the transfer window in non-league, teams do have to be on their guard. And I'm going to mention my local club, Woking, because we had two key players which left in this particular window. Joe Ward, of course, after his heroics in the FA Cup, Peterborough saw something in him. He was always going to be attracting players, clubs, from a higher league, and went to Peterborough. And Ini Effiong, of course, who was played extremely well for Woking, and he signed also for Scotland. I think he went to Ross County, also in the same day that David and Gog went to Ross County as well. But it just goes to show that managers in the lower league do have to keep their guard, and it can be a disruptive influence for teams like Woking or any team in the non-league, because at any point they could have a team that's performing extremely well and then all the plan is thrown out of the window because a key player has left to go to a bigger club.
I would have thought Mikael Miller leaving Carl Shorten will have a big impact on their season, because he is a proper worldie at our level. The last 2 years for me, he's been the best player in the league by a mile. And for him to leave them, he's the sort of player that, I mean, he was the one that did us at home. It was a tight game, 0-0, and a little bit of quality from him wins in the game. So, you know, they've got some good players there, but you lose someone like that, it's a big loss.
You mentioned Woking and Anthony Limbrick, who's the manager stroke coach down there. I think what he will be doing is he'll be putting things in place. And one thing about Anthony is he's a great player developer. He really thinks about the holistic player and how he can make players better. So I'm sure he'll be gutted to have lost those players, but he'll most probably be thinking, you know, that's my role. That's what I'm really, really good at.
Yeah.
And if I know Anthony as well as I think I do, he'll have been making those contingencies by working with other players, getting them ready for when that springboard effect takes place. So, you know, I think you should be proud that those players have moved up.
Yeah,
and I'm sure I'm gutted for Anthony that he's lost those players, but knowing him the way I think, I think he will have made some contingencies and be really, building a long-term strategy for the players coming through.
Yeah.
Worth mentioning Joe Pigott as well, who went from AFC Wimbledon to AFC Wimbledon from Maidstone United, scored on his debut as well against Blackpool. Also, Christina Asombalonga, Chelmsford City to AFC Hornchurch. They lost Finemo Hornchurch as they're seeking promotion out of the Bostik North into the Bostik Premier Division, and they've gone and snapped up a replacement from National South League side Chelmsford. So it just proves, Anthony, that we're sitting here on transfer deadline day, so much going on around the Football League, but still very busy, and that knock-on effect across the Bostik leagues and in non-league.
And I think Dom said it earlier. It's about networks. It's about knowing the players who potentially will fit into what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, and getting the right players in that will help you as a manager and a coach to build that strategy. So I think that the deadline day impacts on everybody, especially when you don't know who you're going to lose until 12. Is it 11 o'clock tonight? Is it 11 o'clock?
Yeah, it's 11 o'clock.
Yeah. You don't know who you're going to lose, and you could lose someone at 10:59, which doesn't give you an opportunity to fill that void. So it's an interesting concept.
Is it more frantic, obviously at the beginning of the season when we talk about transfers? Everyone usually looks at that deadline. It's been very busy. I think it's been a record in the football leagues, the transfer deadline period this year in January. But when you look at August, traditionally is busier. For you as a manager in the Bostik leagues, you'd like to do all your business at the beginning of the season and say, that's my squad. I know that's not quite realistic when you get to this level, but you try and put your squad together as best you can.
We thought we were all sorted and done by pretty much the 1st of June this year, and then we had to sort of rebuild in October. But yeah, you want to get it done early. I mean, some players, they want to go out, they want to go and have a look at 3 or 4 different clubs. They play off against each other. As a manager, I've done it long enough now that I can't really be bothered with that. Really, I kind of think if people are going to come into the club, they're, in their heart of hearts, they know where they're going to end up, and so you kind of dismiss those sort of players a little bit. But then equally, if you could, if there's an opportunity to get someone who's a bit special, you sometimes have to be a bit more patient. But yeah, it's a juggling act during pre-season. To be fair,
we used to say that you're doing pre-season for players for other clubs.
Yeah,
because
it's true.
Because you'd start in May, back end of May, June, like Dom said, and then by July, half the players that you had and you were working with and you thought you'd built a nice little system, someone's come and taken them. So it was almost like, let's not worry about pre-season. Let's just wait until the time comes and then start work then.
Maybe not plenty more action for the Bostik teams across non-league between now and midnight. I'm sure there'll be plenty of action across the Football League and in the Premier League as transfer deadline day continues. We very much look forward to March and our own transfer deadline day, if you like, before the end of the season. Right now we're going to turn our attentions to the weekend. Plenty of action across non-league and in the Bostik leagues. We're going to start with Wingate and Finchley as they take on Leatherhead. Both sides in a good run of form. The hosts are currently 6th in the table with 4 wins out of their last 5, and they're on 51 points in the Bostik Premier. Wingate and Finchley chasing promotion. Stainstown in 5th are only 1 point ahead of them, whilst 4th positioned Folkestone and Invicta only have a 2-point lead against Wingate. Their latest victory was a 7-goal thriller against Lowestoft last night, winning 4-3. Leatherhead boosted an even bigger scoreline on Tuesday, beating Hendon 4-1. The visitors have won 3 of their last 5, drawing 1 and losing another. In 10th position, only 3 points separates the sides, and Leatherhead have a game in hand. How about that? What an exciting game this weekend between Wingate and Finchley and Leatherhead, James.
2 teams going head-to-head and really galvanised in the last couple of games, really. Leatherhead will go in buoyed by that 4-1 victory against Hendon. Hendon are a difficult side, as we said earlier on in the programme, and I think that Leatherhead in particular will take that form forward. They seem to have had a really good run recently, and fair play to both Jack and Sammy for producing a very, very well disciplined, very tight-knit squad. Wingate and Finchley, though, again, they're doing well at the moment, 6th in the league and looking to improve their place to try and push forward into a playoff spot. I think it's going to be a really, really tight game. Maybe not as tight as what it was last night for Wingate and Finchley against Lowestoft, but I think, looking at the form, I think Leatherhead will carry their momentum through. I just think Wingate and Finchley are just not defensively solid at the back. So I think it's going to be a productive afternoon for both Jack and Sammy.
Leatherhead have got a lot of plaudits recently. We mentioned them in the quiz. They've only lost 1. They've got 1 defeat in their last 10. They're on a really good run of form. They dipped when they had the FA Cup run. They looked brilliant against the likes of Billericay when they played them in the Cup. They seem to have found that form again at the right time. They are only, as we mentioned, 4 points off the playoffs. So would they be a team that you think could have that momentum at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think the FA Cup probably was a bit of a distraction, a good distraction, but a distraction. And I think on paper they're definitely one of the stronger sides in that league. And I think they've hit form at a good time, providing they can avoid injuries, because I don't think they've got the biggest squad in that league. I think they could quite easily get in those playoffs. I think they might be the team that makes the late run in there.
We talked, Anthony, about Billericay, who everybody has said will be going up. They've got 6 games in hand on Dulwich at the top. It does look like it's really is theirs to throw away now. They're 1 point clear of Dulwich, but as I said, with 6 games in hand. When you look at the playoffs, we've got Dulwich, Margate, Folkestone, Invicta and Staines. A lot of people will tell you that Dulwich and Margate will be there, being such strong teams. Dulwich have been there for the last 3 years. Margate came down from the National South. Folkestone and Invicta have had a particularly good season this year, as have the likes of Wingate and Finchley and Met Police. Hendon have hit a little bit of a sticky patch the last couple of games, but Leatherhead and Leiston, big clubs as well. It's very hard to tell in this division who's going to be in those playoffs. We've talked about transfer deadline day tonight, and some people will say that it's a little bit predictable what's happening in the transfer window for the likes of United and City and at the top of the league. It's definitely not predictable in the playoff positions in the Bostik Premier Division.
I mean, like we said, Billericay at the moment, based on the form guide, last 6 games, won 5, drawn 1. Margate, who we saw on Saturday, I thought were very, very impressive. We talked about Martin during the game, but also Mr. Chidozie, who has been on fire. So I think between Billericay, Margate and Dulwich, those 3 spots, I would assume, at this moment are pretty secure. Below that, I think we could be looking at anyone else joining the party. And you know, when we look at the guide, the form guide, and we look at Dulwich over the last few games where they've played 6, won 3, lost 3. If that continues, who knows what happens over the next 5 or 6 games.
It's a difficult one as well for Dulwich Hamlet this weekend, because Billericay are playing in the FA Trophy 3rd round. Dulwich Hamlet will look at the game against Met Police at home with real determination that they have to win it. If they have any opportunity to really take the title challenge to Billericay, they've got to win, because Billericay have got so many games in hand, and again, the squad is on so many different levels. No disrespect to any other team within the Bostik Premier compared to the competition that they have. And then looking at the other teams as well that we just mentioned as well, Margate have got a game against Lowestoft Town at home as well, so that's a big game for them too.
Yeah, Folkestone and Victor play Brighton and Sea Regent. That's our featured game on the Bostik League show on Sunday. It's going to be a real cracker. Folkestone, as we said, up in 4th position at the moment. Brighton and Sea, it's their first season in the Bostik Premier Division. They're in 12th position, doing nicely. And you probably go as far down as Leatherhead. There's a 7-point difference between Leatherhead and Tunbridge Angels in 10th and 11th, and Tunbridge have played a couple of games more than Leatherhead as well. So you'd probably say that might be the cut-off point, Dom, for the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's no one else probably that's going to make up those games. It's going to be the top 10 really. And as everyone said, I think Dulwich are bankers for the playoffs. Margate have got an experienced side with a lot of them being at Maidstone with promotions and stuff like that. Folkestone, massive surprise this year. Didn't expect that, but yeah, I think Leatherhead will get in there. I think they'll be the other team.
Into the Bostik North, AFC Sudbury play Waltham Abbey, and the 11th versus 12th battle takes place on Saturday. Waltham Abbey in 12th position have a generous 4 games in hand, though. Only 2 points separate the sides, so good performance is needed from both teams in order to progress up the table. Sudbury can still maintain their position and go even further with their form by winning their last 3 games. It's pretty impressive. Waltham Abbey, on the contrary, have lost their previous 4 matches and are winless in 5. A win for the visitors could put them back on track, but will they have the confidence, James, after those 5 defeats? It's a pretty dire run of form.
It is a dire run of form for Waltham Abbey, and they'll just look again to their form at the moment, and they are really down there at the moment in the Bostik North. They're 21st in the form table, only 4 points from their last 6 games. And then when you have a side like AFC Sudbury, who have played extremely well, 11 in their last 6. So I think it's going to be a case of damage limitation really for Waltham. They've had a bit of a horrific run of late. So if I was to do a prediction for the weekend's game against AFC Sudbury, I think it's going to be a home win.
Yeah, Sudbury, of course, relegated from the Premier Division last year. When you look at the North table, Hornchurch, I can tell you, have won 4-0 tonight. Have got a substantial lead at the top of that table. They're 13 points clear. They have played 1 more game, though, than Bowers and Pitsea. Again, when you look at the divisions, this division has obviously another automatic promotion place, as does the Bostik South. Anthony, we talked a little bit about these playoffs and promotion places last week, but looking at the North division, it just opens it up nicely, having that extra position for automatic promotion. A fair few teams there will be thinking they can maybe get themselves into the playoff, probably as low down as Barking, but they're still up for grabs. Even though AFC Hornchurch have got such an incredible lead, there's still a place there automatically up for grabs.
Well, I mean, looking at Bowers and Pitsea, who are on 60 points currently, and then behind that you've got Potters Bar, Canvey Island, Dereham Town and Morden and Tiptree currently in those positions. And there's 9 points between them. So that's just 3 wins. And for me, between now and the end of the season, with the games being postponed, all it takes is 2 wins and you're in and amongst it. So I think those 5 have got a battle. But then I think, like you said, you go down to Barking and possibly down even to Grays Athletic, which sounds crazy because they're 42 points at the moment. But if they get a run of games going, who knows how they could pick themselves up.
Dom, do you still work on that rule of thumb where you can make a point up every game? If you're looking at trying to make points up potentially outside the playoffs, then your manager will say, we've got 11 games left this season, we could effectively make a point up every game.
Yeah, potentially, yeah, definitely. I think until it's out of reach, you can do that. But yeah, I think looking at the North, the only other one you might want to look at is obviously Jodie's team, because they're so far down the table, but they've played 10 games less, or 9 games less. So you never know with Haybridge down there that they might be able to.
Every week we talk about Haybridge, and I'm sure we will when Jodie's back on. And every week we look at the table and look at the games that they have in hand. And if you just looked at them and Bowers and Pitsea, they've got 10 games in hand on Bowers and Pitsea, who are in that second automatic promotion spot. And every week, Anthony, we look at it and we try and do the maths in our head and say how many points are they behind. Obviously, that would be 30 points. Where does that take them?
That would literally put them 2 points ahead of Bowers as we speak, and they would have to win every single one of those games. Like I said, I'd prefer the points in the bag rather than games in hand, as I said earlier. And
realistically for them, though, if you've got that amount of games in hand, you could be looking at the playoffs and say, well, 51 points is not insurmountable.
It isn't, but then other teams will also be thinking that themselves, and they'll be thinking, here's a point for us here, that if we get that point, we push them back a little bit. And I think that's the kind of strategy that some of those teams will be using when it comes to Heybridge.
It's been another brilliant battle in the Bostik South this season, and South Park take on Sittingbourne this weekend. Both sides on mixed form. South Park losing 2, winning 2 and drawing 1, and Sittingbourne losing 3 but winning 2. South Park are 12, having played just 27 games, the least in the division, and Sittingbourne are in 14th, having played 31. They had such a great start to the season as well. However, only 1 point separates the sides. Interestingly, Sittingbourne have a strong away record with 6 away wins and 6 home wins. So changing venue shouldn't really intimidate them too much.
No, not at all, to be fair. And I think with the news that we heard about earlier on in the show regarding Sittingbourne, with the departure of their manager, I think that could be a deciding factor in the game. I know from experience that Malcolm Porter's side are very decent, again, very well run. We have a soft spot for them here, great team. But I think on a footballing point of view, I think South Park will take full advantage of the current situ and the disarray which may be going on behind the scenes at Sittingbourne. So it could be 3 points on the board for the home side.
I'm going to ask you an interesting question, Dom, because I'm going to say that South Park at the moment, they've got a few games in hand, but are they out of the playoff equation? And I know that your team are just sitting a place above them.
Not quite out of it. I think the thing that's going to kill them is, unless the weather improves, is their home pitch. I mean, that game on Saturday is going to probably be a doubt because they just have so many games called off every season. That's the reason they're behind on their games, and it starts to wear if you're not playing. Players lose a bit of the sharpness, and then they've got to make the games up at some stage, perhaps when the pitches are like dust bowls at the end. So I think they've got to go some. I don't know what's the maths on it. 5 games, 15 points. Yeah, I mean they're still mathematically, but it's getting a bit tight. The top 7 in our league seem to win almost every week. So there is beginning to get a bit of a gap between the playoff teams and the rest of us. So South Park are going to have to do some, but I do think that if it's on Saturday, I do think they'll win that one against Sittingbourne. I think Sittingbourne are having a bit of a tough time at the moment.
Anthony, love this stage of the season. Just what Dom did there. Look over and just do the maths in your head and look at the games and the points. And as we look at the Bostik South table, it is the closest of the Bostik leagues. And you could even say, even though Lewis been on fine form this season and Cray, their positions are still surmountable for those teams in the playoffs. The likes of Carshalton and Greenwich Borough certainly won't have given up hope of being automatically promoted.
Well, there's 7 points between Lewis, who are at top, and Corinthian Casuals, who are in 6th place. That's, again, we come down to it, that's 2 games plus a draw. And when you've got maybe 9, 10 games to go, possibly 11 games to go, that is possibly achievable. So I look at that table right now, and we go all the way down to maybe, like I said, I don't want to say anything, Dom, but I think down to about Phoenix and Hive. And at the moment, I think that's anyone's game. I think Lewis and Cray possibly should be able to keep their momentum at the moment, though.
Yeah, fascinating in the Bostik South when we visit a Bostik South ground in Sittingbourne in a couple of weeks' time for the Bostik League show. We will preview the Bostik League show, which will be featured on our YouTube channel on Sunday morning from 10 o'clock. The latest instalment will be coming from Folkestone Invicta as they take on Brighton Sea Regent. We'll talk more about that game at the end of the show. Right now, we like to give you a couple of games from outside the Bostik divisions that have taken our interest. We're also going to get an update from James very shortly on last week's random game that we threw in there. We did a bit of geography around that as well. This week in the Evo Stick Premier League, we're looking at Farsley Celtic against Hendersford Town. We'll get a location update very shortly so that everybody knows. Another close clash near the top of the table. In 6th, Farsley Celtic have only won 1 of their previous 5 league games, but they can take confidence from their win against Pontefract Collieries last night. Hopefully I got that right. And in West Riding County Cup semi-final, having played 1 extra game than their visitors, Farsley have a slim 2-point lead at Hendersford Town in 8th, have 46 points and are unbeaten in their last 7 games. James, as always, come to you on these games outside the Bostik leagues to see what you think.
This is a really, really good battle, just looking at the table at the moment in the in the Evo Stick Premier, and this is a case of two teams which have had financial trouble before in the past and have rebuilt themselves again. And Hendersford Town are the informed team in the league at the moment, 14 points from their last 6 games. But then again, looking at the table, Farsley Celtic and Hendersford Town are both chasing for a playoff spot. If between Grantham Town, Shore Lane AFC, Ashton United, Warrington Town, and then Farsley Celtic, who are currently 6th with 48 points. Hendersford Town are just behind them in 8th place with 46 points. This is going to be a close one, I think.
Yeah, we mentioned Farsley Celtic earlier when we were talking about financial problems as well. So it's good to see that their team on the pitch, we talked about the difference and how it affects players, are doing so well. We've picked out a game in the National League for you as well. I'd like to do that for all of our aspiring Bostik teams. AFC Fylde play Eastleigh this weekend. AFC Fylde have extended the loan of defenders Luke Burke and Sam Stubbs, as well as winger Johnny Smith, until the end of the season. Smith has scored 6 goals for the side this season and will hope to extend his tally against Eastleigh, who are on exceptional form with 4 wins out of their last 5. They've also unbeaten in 7 league games. In 12th, the side are 5 points behind 9th place AFC Fylde. The latter on a decent form themselves, winning 3 of their previous 5, drawing 1 and losing just 1. Anthony, big game in the National League between these two teams. It wasn't long ago that Eastleigh were really challenging for promotion to the Football League and that were the most talked about side in that division.
They were. And, you know, as I look at the league table now and based on what you've just said, it looks like Fylde are in pole position in this game, and the form table says it. They've got those 3 new, well, they've re-signed, I think, or they've extended their loans and etc. And I think they're potentially in a very, very good position going into this game.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. James, just to mention the game from last week, we had a lot of comments about the game that we chose. It turned out to be interesting.
Well, it was a cracker, really. Buxton versus Colville Town. It had drama, excitement and controversy. This game actually had it, to be fair. It was nearly called off. It didn't even nearly get off the ground because it was due to the waterlogged pitch. But however, the guys at Buxton did an amazing job, sanded it, gave it Miracle Grow, whatever was required. The game went ahead. 3 penalties, determined home defending and some less than reliable defending by Colville. It ended up 2-2 in the end. A real advert for how good non-league football is.
So there we go. If we pick out a game on a Wednesday, be sure to follow it on a Saturday. And Colville is in Leicestershire, just in case anyone wondered. We did cover that last week. Right, all that remains is to talk about our featured game this weekend on the Bostik League show. Sunday from 10 o'clock on our YouTube channel. Just search Back of the Net. It's going to be a fascinating game. Folkestone Invicta taking on Brighton and Sea Regent. Don, we mentioned Folkestone. They've been a real surprise package this year.
Yeah, they've got a sort of stable club, I suppose. Same manager for a long time, and came out of the south a couple of years ago, and he's done a really good job. Really, really good job. Lost a couple of centre halves in the summer. 2 key players. I thought, well, that would be an issue, but they've done brilliant. Really, 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 really good.
The only slip they may have had was on Saturday. They took on Hendon, who are obviously in 8th position, and we talked about Nico Muir. Hendon really fancied by a lot of people. If Muir hasn't been turned by QPR, Folkestone were 3-0 up away at Hendon, and we were looking at that result, Anthony, on Saturday with 15 minutes to go, saying, wow, Folkestone Invicta really need to be taken seriously. And I'm not saying they don't, but Hendon came back to draw 3 apiece. Yeah. What effect will that now have on the Folkestone Invicta players?
I think the effect will, from the oppositions, will be saying, let's not give up. Unless we're 4 or 5-0 down, listen, we can pull those 3 goals back. We don't know. I don't know what happened in those last 15 minutes, because I thought there might have been, a player sent off, or, they went down to 10 men or something like that. But Hendon obviously showed great character. They really dug deep, and maybe Hendon, forgive me. Folkestone honestly just thought we've won this game, and they just switched off and allowed Hendon to come back into it, which is one of those unfortunate things.
We'll be interested to see how they bounce back and if they've got their bounce back ability right. James, we've got to mention Brighton and Sea Regent before we go. They've done a fantastic job this season. They've come up to the division. They've had plenty of promotions. They played another team, Dorking Wanderers, have also had plenty of promotions over the last few years. Dorking came out with a winner in the 90th minute after Brighton City equalised in the 90th minute as well. It was some game there. Their run now, they're sitting in 12th position, 38 points. Brighton and Sea Regent now take on Folkestone, who are in 4th. They then take on Billericay, who are in 2nd, and they then take on Margate. So they've got a really tough run of fixtures. It starts with Folkestone on Saturday, but really nothing to lose for Brighton and Sea.
No, nothing at all. I think Brighton and Sea Regent should take some real pride in how they've performed this season. And considering the fact that they lost James Webster at the very start to Averley, you would have thought that Brighton and Sea would have been at the lower end of the table, but fair play to them for being where they are, and they will go into this game with no fear. They've done themselves proud so far this season, even though they've got a tough test in Billericay and Margate to come up. But seeing how Folkestone capitulated against Hendon, they will go into that game with real confidence and think, we could actually get a result here. So I think it's going to be a very open game, and Brighton and Sea Regent will really take their chances against Folkestone on Saturday.
Folkestone, Billericay, Margate, Brighton and Sea Regent, probably the toughest set of fixtures in English football at the moment. They then play Leatherhead twice. They also play Staines, who are up in the playoff positions, Merstham, who are on the in-form sides, and to finish all of that off on the 10th of March, they play Dulwich Hamlet. So good luck to Brighton and Sea over the next few weeks with their fixtures. I'm sure that's why they joined the Bostik Premier Division, and they can't wait. Right, end of the show, and just time to say a big thank you to Anthony, Dom and James for your company this evening. Don't forget, plenty more content on our YouTube channel. All you need to do is search Back of the Net on YouTube. The Bostik League show is back with Folkestone Invicta against Brighton and Sea on Sunday from 10 o'clock. You can also go onto iTunes and subscribe to the Back of the Net podcast. If you missed any of tonight's show, the best of the show will be up tomorrow at 7 o'clock. And of course, you can watch the show back in full on our YouTube channel with plenty of different camera angles, thanks to our producer, Luke. And that will be available for you in the morning. Thank you ever so much for listening, and we'll be back with another show next week at 7 o'clock.